moving forward, get ready for this offseason.
Titans will travel to the winner of the Chiefs and Texans next week. That game will kick off this afternoon. Earlier Saturday.
and stopped them twice.
Right.
Forced them into some turnovers, which is something they hadn't really done. So it's like you say what you want about the inept offense that Tennessee has. It's enough to get them into the championship game now.
And that's the thing we talk about. You got to have a full, well-rounded football team. That's a solid all the way around. Special teams, defense. You've got to all facets have to play well to win, and they did it. They showed it again last night.
We've got 1970s football coach over here. We've got to be well-rounded.
That's it. That's
defense
right.
and running the ball.
Well,
but
every year it's obvious.
It's obvious.
You can give me all the gimmicks you want, but every year
they explain the Kansas City Chiefs. Terrible defense. Now they've gotten better the last few weeks.
Not terrible.
They're terrible.
Their defense is terrible, and they can't run the ball. They're rushing.
But how many Super Bowls have they won? None. Okay, so let's let what they do last year.
They might get one this year.
Okay, well, why don't
to
we
the
wait?
chagrin of Raiders fans, right? Because it's the damn Chiefs.
That's right.
But I think Chaz. I think balance. My point is always, and I find myself a lot these days on a lot of these arguments being in the middle, sort of, because I believe that it is because of the rules, because of the style of play, offense is much more important than it used to be.
Of course.
Defense, though, does not. You don't just forget about defense. So the Chiefs are not the perfect mix, but they just score so much on offense it overcomes their deficiencies on defense. Where I think you need to strive for a really high performing offense and then a pretty good defense.
It just things slow down in the playoffs. So
True.
You could just see the difference so far.
Until
these
today,
last
when
two
the
weekends.
Chiefs put up 50 points.
Well, you say that, but we'll see what happens.
At half.
I mean, I really believe that'll happen today. I think the Chiefs now. It's almost like Moses out there at the Red Sea parted the sea for Andy Reid.
You're going nuts
to go across because now it's stacked up. I mean, you're the Chiefs, and suddenly the Patriots lose, then Baltimore loses. Now if you win today, you have home field for the AFC Championship game.
The big word you just said, if. I don't know what's in your coffee over there. Moses
so
parting
you're
the
tell
Red
me,
Sea.
Yeah, for Andy Reid, it's a much easier road. It's a much easier road.
Okay.
Than if they had to exercise the demons against the Patriots.
Keep talking.
It's the Texans. Have you seen the Texans play football?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. This guy jinxed the Bills last weekend. Some tweet at halftime about how great the Bills were, and look what happened. So the more he talks, the more I want to put money down on Houston.
Yeah,
I think we should bet Chaz on Houston right now in the studio.
I'll take that all day. I mean,
but it's going to be an exciting game. I mean, I think it's going to be a blowout. I mean, I really do. I mean, I think that's the consensus thought too, actually. But we'll see how it all works out. Okay, so you have that game yesterday. And the one thing I want to mention, that because with Raider fans, one of the things I've seen in the Carr discussion and other discussions has been around the lack of offensive weapons for the Raiders this past year. Did anybody watch Baltimore? They went 14-2 with no wide receivers. They have one good tight. Who? Seth Roberts?
I wouldn't say no wide receivers. Hollywood Brown?
Marquise Brown is going to be good, but he's a rookie.
He's going to be good, and he was hurt most of the year.
Right.
You take out his first, as someone who had him on his fantasy team, you take out his first 2 weeks, he didn't do a lot.
Right.
Had a big game yesterday, and he's going to be good. But, you've got that wide receiving core is terrible. You've got 5 tight ends. One of them can catch a football.
Yeah, but, with the way they run the ball, wide receivers, that's exactly what I'm saying. Run the ball and play defense. So we've got that. We've got Josh Jacobs. So we can run the ball. So why is there such a big deal about Derek Carr? Run the ball and play defense. That wins games. That wins championships.
Well, they went 14-2, not because their defense. They were the highest scoring team in the NFL.
And they were the highest rushing team in the NFL.
But they were the highest scoring team in the NFL. They scored points. That's the difference. You have to score points. You can have Derek Carr quarterback. I got no problem with that. But he's got to score points, and that was the issue, right?
Absolutely.
So I think. But back to your point about defense, if you have a really good offense and a good defense, then you're fine. In today's
running
league,
game
you're
and
fine.
defense.
Today's game, you're fine.
Mm-hmm.
Although, again, the Chiefs go against that because they don't have a running game. But you can go back and forth on it. But I think you want some balance with. I think because of the rules, the offense, you want that to be a little bit better than your defense. Although with San Francisco's example, now you have George Kittle. I think Jimmy Garoppolo yesterday looked very Derek Carr-like. Efficient.
I was going to say, is Derek that handsome? Because Jimmy's a handsome man.
I'm sure his wife thinks so.
No. He kind of did, to be honest with you. I mean, because it was basically we're just going to get in here, do what we have to do, and leave type of game.
That's the same thing. Defense.
Nobody, including almost everybody that bets, thought Minnesota was winning that game.
Right.
Like the onslaught of money on the Niners was kind of ridiculous.
But they played defense and they ran the ball. That's just playoff football right there.
Well, and that was one thing too.
And they played Kirk Cousins.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there was a. I mean, that game, San Francisco, their defense it played so well. But then on offense, when they saw that Minnesota couldn't move the ball, that's when they packed it in and just started running the ball, right? And going to short passing games. So to me, it was the smart thing to do if you're a coach. But not exciting for fans to watch, although for San Francisco fans who didn't show up until the last 6 weeks,
Right.
they are excited about it because they get to host the NFC Championship game.
And worst case.
Oh, say that's what the Niners defense is built on, that short passing game, though. I mean, his average depth of target's right at 6 yards, is one of the worst in the league. But their receivers have yards after catch are first in the league.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what they do is the short passing.
You say he's Derek Carr but they win games, they score points, so he doesn't get the criticism.
Is a lot better
defense
than
a little
Raiders.
bit better.
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah. That's a bold statement.
Yeah, defense is a
So
lot better.
for Raider fans, the worst case scenario is 49ers Chiefs Super Bowl, I think.
That's
Probably
very
the two
true.
highest hated teams for Raider fans.
I don't know what the odds are before the game today, but that to me would be the most likely matchup.
Mm-hmm.
But you never know. Seattle, I think, is a wild card. If they can beat Green Bay today, then I think all bets are off because they in San Francisco play such close games and it could go either way.
Yeah, but at least you would watch a 49ers Chiefs Super Bowl. Is anybody excited for a Seahawks Texans Super Bowl?
No.
I'm a gambling junkie.
Rating
I
disaster.
wouldn't even watch that.
A ratings
I
disaster.
don't know. Last
All
year's
right.
Super Bowl was pretty fun.
Time up for a break, guys. Time for a break. We're going to step aside. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the Raiders roster for 2020. Who's going to stay? Who might need to go? Who should go? Who shouldn't go? Free agent opportunities, all of that coming up next here. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
NCAA basketball Tuesday night at 6:30 on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
This is Cliff Branch, formerly of the Oakland Raiders, 3-time Super Bowl champ, 4-time Pro Bowl, and you listen to the Silver and Black Show.
Indeed. R.I.P. to the great Cliff Branch, who should be named into the Hall of Fame this week. We'll see. We haven't talked about that. We'll react to it.
Get me started on that.
We'll react to it next weekend because both Cliff Branch and Tom Flores should be in. And that's the one thing. Before we get to the Raiders roster stuff that we're going to talk about, I thought the Hall of Fame telling Bill Cowher yesterday on national TV before anybody else gets to find out was ridiculous. I mean, how can you do that? So you're waiting to the 15th to name the entire class, but yet you're willing because what? Because it's a good TV bit.
Cash grab.
To have Bill Cowher know before anybody else does. I just don't think that's fair when you got a lot of people waiting to find out. What say you guys?
I say a fair is where you judge a pig. Fair in life doesn't matter.
Like F-A-I-R.
Yeah.
Fair, like a county fair.
Yeah.
Zuckerman's
Gotcha.
name is big.
That's a phrase I'd heard my whole life. Stephen A. Smith uses it all the time too. But it's like, well, who cares? You know, it is. What do I think they should, like, if you're going to wait, should you wait and everybody? Yeah. But they didn't. Who cares?
Yeah, I didn't see it live, but I heard it on the radio, and they were talking about it. I mean, yeah, sure, it's a nice moment. It's a television moment. You're always building your brand, right? It's good for marketing.
Yeah,
purposes.
but you got people. You got people alive. You got people who have passed, and their families are waiting for new. I just think it was cheap. I don't think it was. I just don't. I think everybody should find out at the same time. I've never seen that happen in any of the other sports before, where they announced one person, and then today, of course, Jimmy Johnson's going to get in. They're going to announce that on Fox. I'm sure that's what's going to happen today too.
So you're not an open one present on Christmas Eve kind of guy?
Shameless.
No, I grew up that way, but that's different. Everybody got to open a present. It wasn't just me, and everybody watched and said, "Oh, I can't open mine until tomorrow." Okay. All right, moving on.
Good segment.
Man. All right,
Tough
so
crowd.
one of the things we want to talk about today with everybody is about the Raiders roster for 2020. So if we look at players, what we want to do here is guys that we think, if there are such a thing as untouchable players or players that you just want to make sure that you're keeping for whether they are talent reasons or contract reasons, whatever. Want to go through some of those guys, also talk about some of the guys we think over the next couple minutes here, guys that we think need to go and maybe that just haven't worked out for the Raiders and so on. So we'll start with the positives, which is, kind of the guys that the Raiders have committed money to, who've played really well. And I think for me, just to start the discussion, I think for me, that offensive line, you look at Trent Brown, you look at Rodney Hudson guys, I think those are two guys that aren't going anywhere and really have deserved what they got. Obviously, Trent Brown got the big deal last year. Rodney Hudson, again, this year being honored for his play. He's underrated, I think, a lot of the times. But to me, those guys are untouchable guys. Those are guys that aren't going to be going anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's definite. I mean, salary cap reasons alone, even if they weren't, because of the extensions and everything, you're keeping them, but they are cornerstones to build around that line.
They are.
And they're already under contract, so they're not going anywhere, right?
Right, exactly. I would also add to that list Richie Incognito. Because they gave him, obviously, the little extension. Him, Darren Waller, of course, Josh Jacobs, Max Crosby. These are guys that I don't need to tell you need to stay. I also think that he made enough progress in year 2 that Colton Miller right now is a guy that that I feel pretty good about for the Raiders, and I think fans should be too. Chaz, what do you think? You think Colton Miller is a guy who's going to be there for 10 seasons or so?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the same thing, he's under contract. All these young guys that you're talking about now, all these guys that are under contract, this is part of the foundation. Of course you want to keep your top players. We're going to get into there's the salary cap casualties, right? And then some guys will price themselves out. We're going to get into it later. There's some guys that are disruptive and maybe abrasive with coaches or other players and not a good locker room fit.
Right.
Those kind of things. But as far as these young guys that are already under contract, I think the solid foundation is already there. So really, you could probably go into the free agents, unrestricted free agents, and those kind of things That's really where you're going to find out, who's staying, who's not.
Well, I think you're right. I think the young players, if we look at that overall, most of them have worked out pretty good. Not all of them, and we'll get to some of them in a minute. But Colton Miller, obviously Jonathan Abram, we only saw him one game. Mullen made great progress. We talked about that this week as well. Cleveland Furl also progressed. Here's one that I'm a little iffy on because he made good progress and then he got hurt, and that was Arden Key. Arden Key, I was ready to dismiss and say it didn't work, but he really started to improve there before the injury.
Yeah, I'm never been a big Arden Key guy. I mean, we had these conversations before the draft 2 years ago. But it's not like you're in salary cap hell to where you have to come up with money. Why wouldn't you hold on to him for another year, see if he develops? Because, there's a reason he was highly touted, early on at LSU. You're not paying him a big sum. It's and that's the thing with this Raiders roster. It's like I mentioned to Chaz before the show. It was actually kind of nice to look at the roster and not be like, oh, my God, how are these guys still on here? Because in the past, there's always been 3 or 4. You're like, that's ridiculous. That guy's got to go. You don't have that with this roster. You've got a lot of young guys making little money to where, they're going to have $62 million in change.
Right. And Kelly, what do we agree on? Like, it was about a 3 or 4 year process where you can really find out if a guy's what his potential is going to be.
Oh, no, by like week 2, you can pretty much hammer that out, throw that out there.
You just mentioned Colton Miller.
This is social media now. If you're not great the first day you play, your career.
Yeah, no, that's all Captain Obvious is out there. But, Colton Miller is a great example of that. The first season, you're like, I don't know. And then, now look at the strides he's made. And Arden Key is another example of that. Last year, maybe this year, you saw a lot of flashes. So I think Jerry West said it for the NBA. It was 4 years till you could really tell if a guy, and that's why they've got the 5-year rookie contract, right? So you really get to see what you have. So you're talking about all these young guys, they're all under contract. They're all going to stay unless something, training camp, some kind of major injury or some kind of, jumping on Mercedes in Beverly Hills.
Well, I agree with you there. I think that's why when we talk about those guys, those young players who've started to build that foundation for the Raiders, those are the guys that stick with you. Now, if we look at some guys who are going to cost the Raiders a ton of money and they're good players and you don't need to get rid of them because they're doing fine, but you might not guarantee that they'll be around just because of the mix of talent, opportunity, and how much it's going to cost. And there's 3 guys there that I think pop off the list. One is Gabe Jackson at guard. Second is Derek Carr, quarterback, which we've beat that horse to death. And Tyrell Williams at wide receiver. Now, Williams had injury, but in the second year of his contract, is he a guy that you want to commit the money to? Is he going to stay healthy? Or with this deep wide receiver class and the opportunity to maybe go out and grab another number 2 somewhere, is he a guy you keep on? And Kelly, you gave me a perplexed look.
Yeah, there's no way Tyrell Williams is going anywhere. Look at
because of contract?
Well, no, because he's a good player. The
drop off after him.
I was going to say the first part.
But if that injury doesn't get better in the offseason, you can cut loose. Would you not do that if you don't see improvement there?
You're not going to cut him loose now. Not after 1 year. You're not going to, unless his foot falls off, or you. And literally, if he loses a foot, yeah, you'll cut him.
Yeah.
But there's absolutely no way because this wide receiver class is good, but you don't have 5 picks in the top 10 to get 3 wide receivers,
right? Because
the wide receiving core for this team is not good.
Yeah.
There's some talent there, but if you take Ty off there, you have Hall of Famer Hunter Renfrow and nothing else.
Right, but if somebody else is out there, you've seen John Gruden jump at other wide receivers before, like he did with Jordy Nelson, and I think there's an opportunity there.
And how'd that work out?
I'm not saying it worked out. I'm just saying I'm talking about activity. I'm not saying they should. I'm telling you that the opportunity for them to maybe find somebody else because Gruden likes the flavor of the month.
You're always trying to improve the roster at every position at all times, although sometimes it doesn't look like it. Maybe a team makes a lateral move to get a veteran or, leadership, somebody to straighten out the locker room to mentor a young player at the same position, something like that. So you're always looking to improve at every position at all times. Like you said, these guys, they're bringing in guys every week for workouts. You're kicking over every rock to find some talent. And we've seen them recently. They've signed a few guys from the CFL.
Yeah.
So they're looking everywhere. They're bringing in guys, and that's when you get all those guys. You got 90 guys in training camp, and it'll shake out that way. But, of course, you're always looking to improve the roster. So if there's somebody out there better than Terrell Williams, they'll go out and get him. And, unfortunately for these players, the contracts aren't guaranteed. So
You're right. And with Terrell Williams, they don't owe him his $1.1 million till later, which is cheap.
Yeah.
For a receiver of that quality. But
$1.1 million. Let's save that by getting rid of our only wide receiver.
if he can't get on the field, though, it doesn't matter, right? So
that's right.
But to your point, a good wide receiver. I like him. All right, we're going to step aside for a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about players who are really on the kind of cutting line, and then players that we believe the Raiders should say goodbye to, and who will not see Nevada soil, who will not see Allegiant
Silver
Stadium.
State?
The Silver State, that's right. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio. Don't go anywhere.
The only way to take Silver and Black today with you is with a radio.com app. Download it today and search CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas and listen to us anytime, anywhere.
Welcome back to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Don't forget, we also have our Tuesday night show, Silver and Black Tonight, which will soon follow Silver and Black in the middle of the night. No, just kidding. Whoa. We're not adding that show. But Silver and Black Tonight, 6 to 7 p.m. on Tuesday nights. We usually use that show to recap games, but with the offseason here, we have a little bit different. And this Tuesday, Vic Tafer, the beat writer for The Athletic, who just announced that he's actually coming to Las Vegas with the Raiders as well. Vegas Vic. Yes, I told him he should change his profile picture to Vegas Vic. Oh, yeah. Vic Tafer will be with us. We'll talk to him about everything under the sun, Raiders as well, get his view on that, and talk to him, too, about coming to Las Vegas, since he's going to be now a resident.
Got to uproot the family.
He's got it, yeah. So we'll talk to him about that. But so that'll be fun. So that's Tuesday night, Silver and Black tonight, 6 to 7 p.m. Chaz and I are here. Kelly's too busy to join us, so he's got to, right? You can, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's
Yes.
unfortunately due to other obligations
That's right.
that
Kelly-
I like to call
other
paying a
obligations.
mortgage.
Kelly's actually Marshmallow. He's DJing.
That's right. He puts on that helmet.
Is that a fat joke? Is that really-
Oh.
I didn't say
Hey,
a marshmallow.
And besides, I'm not a DJ.
The marshmallow.
I'm not a DJ. I actually have musical talent.
There you go.
Ouch.
That's what I'm talking about.
I really do.
We'll get people upset, but that's okay. All right, so let's get back into our discussion, guys, around players that we see that will be with the roster, should be with the roster next year for the Raiders, and others who might be kind of on that iffy line, and then those we think they should probably say goodbye to based on performance, based on contract, whatever. So if I look at guys that I think will be back, but if I was them, I would not necessarily buy a house in Las Vegas. And I would start with a guy who I really like as a human being. We've met him at events here, especially charity events. He's done a lot of them here in Las Vegas, and that's Eric Harris. Okay. I think Eric's played well. And again, good guy, and his story is a great story of where he's come from. But I don't know that long term you can't upgrade from that. And they might not be able to do that this year. But if he comes to Las Vegas next year, I think he'll be here. But if he comes to Las Vegas next year and takes a next step up and plays really well and helps that Raider defensive backfield guys, then I think he could be maybe long term.
There's plenty of opportunity. He's got a shot.
Yes,
that's the thing.
Agreed.
And he's played well enough to earn that chance. So I think he's going to have an opportunity to show he belongs in Las Vegas.
No, he will. That's another guy that's under contract. So barring any crazy offseason like we talked about, he'll definitely be here. He couple of pick sixes. He sealed that game in Indianapolis, and then got the Charger game started off on the right foot with the pick six, and he was all over the field this year. So he really showed he belongs. And just a leader in the locker room. I saw him after that game, the Jacksonville game, and he was doing all the interviews, and you could just tell he was the only player that took a lap around the stadium, and just to celebrate the fans and the fact that it was the last game ever in Oakland. He's just one of those genuine guys, locker room, all the above that you want to have around. So he'll be here for sure.
He also gave up a lot of big plays. So
you
have to look
who
at
didn't?
that. Yeah, in that backfield, you're absolutely right. But I think with him, again, I think this is a guy who will be here next year. I'm not saying he won't be, and he should be, because given the opportunity for all the reasons you said, Chaz, and you too, Kelly. But I don't think he should buy a house, because I don't know if he plays really, really well next year and makes that step up for all the reasons you're saying. I think he sticks around. He's going to have every opportunity, just like Kelly says. A couple of the guys going back 2 drafts ago, a couple of guys, again, who made progress, who I like, but I think are teetering on, wow, we don't know if they'll be here in 2 years. And that, of course, is Maurice Hurst and P.J. Hall. Oh, look at Kelly. His boy Maurice. You're worried about him.
Well, no, there's no reason to get rid of him with their contract situation.
Right.
I mean,
same thing.
They are both super cheap players.
But
there's other guys on that D line that are older and more expensive, that would be more
right.
You get more chance to get rid of if you bring in someone else.
Correct. But again, this exercise is not me saying they should go. This is an exercise of guys I'm saying who should not long term think that they could be a Raider, because guess what? Maurice Hurst is cheap, and so is P.J. Hall. That doesn't mean you're going to win with them. So if you get to a point where you need to up your game and they're not performing at that level, it doesn't matter how cheap they are.
Well, the way you're doing this, though, then long term, everybody could be out there, because, they could get rid of Josh Jacobs tomorrow because of any. I mean,
I'm talking about more realistically. No.
Mo Hurst is going nowhere because of his contract.
You're keeping all these young guys.
I was going to say P.J. Hall's going nowhere because of his contract.
Right.
They are so cheap. The production that they're getting is they're outdoing their contract.
Well, I think with Maurice Hurst, you're more correct there. I think with P.J. Hall, I think going into 2020, and again, he'll be here. There's no question. 2020, though, is a make or break for here. I talked about how well he played on the insides a lot, and it wasn't recognized. But at the same time, I think you have to see him elevate yet again. Or if not, then there's opportunity there for others to come in, and we'll see what they do in the draft this year, too, on the inside. But I'm just saying those are 2 guys that I would watch in addition to Eric Harris. Also long-term, if you look at Keyshawn Nixon as well as Jonathan Hankins, who, again, he's cheap and has played really well. So I think he's got a good opportunity to stay here for a few years. as well. But then also you look at Rico Gafford on that wide receiver, Derek Carrier at tight end. These are guys that I think I would not necessarily buy a house, but I think that they have an opportunity next year to prove they belong.
Carrier was the first one I thought of because when you've got Waller and Moreau, the youth movement, you save $1.85 million in cap, which isn't a huge number,
right?
But it's also $2 million in cash.
Yeah,
I mean that's a savings.
Or you can go make another acquisition and use that. Yeah, exactly.
And that's like we said. I mean, they're not in a salary cap issue to where they have to make some of these cuts. Because like you mentioned Gabe Jackson earlier. That's $9.6 million you can save by cutting him, but he's still a good guard.
Yeah,
he's worth that when you have the salary cap money. But I mean, that's a big number.
Yeah,
it's like this class. I don't think you can go out and replace him because the interior defensive line isn't going to be good because Brandon Scherf might leave Washington, but he's going to be the top 2 or 3 highest paid guards in football. So you're not going to make that move. So where are you improving it? If you get rid of Gabe, but then it's $10 million.
It's a lot of money. But I think yeah. So these are all those questions, and we don't have to deal with the reality of making those tough decisions. But Chaz, there's some other guys too. I want to name Brandon Parker, Marcel Aitman, Nick Nelson, who I really like. Nick Nelson coming out as a 4th-round draft pick, but he just hasn't been able to stay healthy or get to a point where he's seen significant playing time. Same with we talked about Aitman at wide receiver, hasn't been able to break in as well, right. And that fumble he had in the last game was not good for him either. Those guys I think are also maybe not only should they not buy a house here, but they might not make it out of camp.
Right. Well, those guys, like you said, those guys are under contract. You want to talk about like an unrestricted free agent. And you're talking about the offensive line, Devy, Denzel Good. These are guys that, versatile. That offensive line was probably the highlight of the season, correct? So those are guys, very versatile line. You can plug and play a lot of these guys back and forth. So, I'd keep a little bit of the free agent money invested in the offensive line. You brought up Rico Gafford. Now there's a guy that's coming on the up. He's starting to learn the system. He's been on the practice squad. So that could be somebody going forward that's productive next year. There's a lot, there's a lot of free agents on the team that we need to talk about. I think on the defensive side, a couple of the safeties, Carl Joseph, maybe they're worried about Worley. So these are guys that are like, well, hot and cold. We probably wouldn't miss them if they were gone.
Right, and you mentioned Denzel Good, who they re-signed this week as well. So they've made that commitment to him.
Right. Oh yeah. He tweeted something that he'll see us in Vegas.
Oh yeah, but the Raiders.
Was it official?
Announced,
okay.
Yeah, the Raiders announced it. So Denzel Good is back. Devy, I don't think will come back now because they went with Good. We'll see how that all works down. But yeah, no, I agree. I think Brandon Parker, Kelly, I think he's gone. I think that experiment has kind of proven itself not to be worthy unless you can't get somebody better. He is cheap. As a backup,
I think his draft capital kind of keeps him around.
You think one more year?
Yeah, you're going to have to give him another shot.
That makes sense.
You mentioned Aitman. He probably is going to be gone, but I would much rather have him in his contract than Zay Jones at $1.4 million. I never understood the Zay Jones experiment. Period. I mean, I know he had monster college numbers for East Carolina, but he has shown me absolutely nothing in the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I think you're right, and so those guys, but those guys are like tweeners. They could make it, they could commit. They've had good, they've had some bad. When I look at guys that I think you should say goodbye to, and again, not because they didn't contribute, some of them, but I think Tahir Whitehead, especially, he's due to count $7.3 million against the cap.
He was one that I kept looking at last night. But I was like, okay, cool.
But who do you have?
Let's get rid of a linebacker in the worst linebacking core in football.
It's just expensive. Can you get something of equal talent for less out on the market?
Yeah, but you've got $62 million in cap room.
Right.
72 if you get rid of Gabe Jackson. 90-something if you get rid of Carr.
But I think
it's like,
But it depends who's out there and if they can upgrade at that position at the same money, then you do it, right? If you can't,
but you need 3 linebackers to start, and we have 0.
I understand.
If you get rid of Whitehead.
I understand.
So it's are you going to improve 3 different spots? That's the whole thing.
But Tahir Whitehead at $7.3 million, That's tough. Now, Deshaun Kaiser, I think, gone. I think that.
Yeah, he was on my list. Too.
And
what about Vontez Burfict? They bring him back?
No,
or?
I think you got to say goodbye to him too. You can't rely on it. And with what happened, I
don't think that's up to the Raiders at this point. That's up to the NFL.
True. That's a good point.
He's off suspension.
Okay, but if he sneezes wrong, he's done for his season.
Yeah, but does he come back? He was the quarterback of the defense for Paul Gunther, and you could bring him back on the cheap on a make good incentive laden sort of contract. If he misses games, you don't pay him.
But the thing is, just like any business, you hire an employee. He could be a great employee, but if he's only showing up for 5 days out of the month, what good is it, right? It doesn't matter. He could be the best employee ever. Well, so I think I don't think that they will rule it out.
No, of course not.
But I don't think they should. Just in my view.
He's a quarterback of the defense. He's a quarterback in a 1-15 team.
All right. Then also, I think defensive backfield. I think Worley's gone. I think Lawson's gone. I think Joseph obviously is gone. And then at linebacker, despite the fact that you don't have linebackers, restricted free agent Nicholas Morrow. I think he looked good, promising as a young guy. I just don't see the progress there, and I think they could probably do better looking outside.
I think you can get more. I don't think he's going to be somebody that's going to cost much. I think he's got a chance to stay because of that, but I'm not banking on it.
I think Nevin Lawson stays, actually. He played pretty big down the stretch, and I know, Gruden really perked up. When I was in London, I asked him about Nevin Lawson. He perked up. He got excited, and that might have been the fact that everybody was harping on the Vontez Burfict suspension, and I changed the subject. That might have got him excited, but I think he might be around, so I disagree with you on that one.
Yeah, I mean, he played 2 good games down the stretch, and of course, the last 2 games of the year, he played really well because his contract is up. So that's my issue with him. I mean, he had the talent. You're right. Gruden talked a lot about him, but for whatever reason, during the other part of the season, wasn't able to do it. But he might be around because it depends what they do in the draft. So it'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on. All right, we're going to step aside. When we come back, Jim Zbach from the Great Lakes Raiders Booster Club about Fred Biletnikoff and the honor they're doing at his high school up in Erie will be with us. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Night at 6:30 on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
You found the most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black. This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Here's your host, Scott Gobranson.
Welcome back to the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. We're going to use this segment to talk about a Raider, Hall of Famer, a legend, I know beloved by all of Raider Nation. That, of course, is Fred Biletnikoff. Fred Biletnikoff, inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1988. One of the greatest wide receivers to play in the NFL, most valuable player in Super Bowl 11 in 1977. Of course, the Raiders' first Super Bowl victory. College, he was a Florida State Seminole. The annual award given out for the best wide receiver in college football is the Fred Biletnikoff Award. And we're going to go out now on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line, where we say hello to our good friend Jim Zbach. He is a 81, I'm going to give the year away, Jim, 1981 Tech Memorial graduate. He went to the same high school, which was called Erie Technical Memorial High School in Erie, Pennsylvania, now called Erie High. He went to the same high school as Fred Biletnikoff, and they are doing something really cool to honor the great Raider. So we go out on the phone and say hello to Jim. How you doing, Jim?
Hey, guys, I'm doing well. Thanks, Scott. I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, of course. No, this was really cool. And we know that the athletic field at Erie High School is named after Fred Biletnikoff. Also, your colors are fantastic, purple and gold. Chaz and I both went to Carlsbad High School in California, and we were purple and gold. Although now they've changed it to kind of black and purple. I'm a little upset about that, but nonetheless, so we share that. And Jim, you are the president of the Erie-based Great Lakes Raiders Booster Club. Tell us a little bit about Biletnikoff Field and what you guys are doing to honor the former great Raider.
Yeah, this is I became a Raider fan because of Fred Biletnikoff in the 70s, so I've been that way for ever since. And he's had this. The field's actually been named after him for quite a while, but the signage that's been up there hasn't really reflected the greatness that Fred is. So I happened to get a call from one of the other guys on the committee who was talking about redoing the sign, and they've kind of made a run at this a few different times. And Fred is very much involved in this process, by the way. And he called me and says, "Hey, we're looking at redoing the sign." And I said, "Hey, I do design work, and I went to the school, and I was in commercial art at the school and all this kind of stuff." So he goes, "Yeah, would you be willing to do it?" And I go, "Of course. Are you kidding?" This is coming full circle for me. From a big fan of his when I was a teenager, and now coming back around to actually doing the honor here in his hometown of building what we believe is going to be a much more accurate view of how great Fred is. And when you look at the sign itself, we have a list of all his incredible accomplishments, and they're really astonishing when you read them all. You touched on a couple of them, but there's a ton more in there, and so that's pretty cool. So we're in the process now of got the signage designed. We're in the process of fundraising to get the thing done.
That's awesome. And Jim, I know
I reached out to you.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, and we of course want to help. And I know that for you guys, the last we heard, you've raised about $4,000 for the sign. The estimate of how much it's going to cost is about $12,000, and you're working with a sign company to kind of work on the materials and all that kind of stuff because the sign hasn't been upgraded since 1991, correct? Right.
And it was hand painted back then, and I think one of the students actually did it. So
oh my gosh, free labor, I get it.
Yeah.
So no, but that's great. I mean, and you talk about Fred being involved in this as well. Talk about for those of us outside of Erie, Pennsylvania, talk about what Fred means to the community and to the high school as far as just being a representative of that area.
Yeah, it's Fred is by far the most accomplished athlete we've had around here. Although we've had a number of them. Bob Sanders is from here. You might know him.
Yeah.
Mike McCoy. We've had a few other guys that are pretty big names too, but nothing like Fred. Fred comes back on a fairly frequent basis. He's been involved in a number of fundraising events here locally and done some really great things for this town. The cool thing is it's been arranged too where one time he had actually met with the football team from the high school and gave them a talk before one of their games, which was really cool too. And I heard that was extremely well received. Which is pretty cool. So he's been tremendous for us, and he comes back frequently. Like I said, he's involved in this process, and this sign is actually a kickoff of a major campaign to redo the entire field for the school and the track and soccer facilities and all that kind of stuff. that's a big deal. That's starting next year.
That's cool.
And Fred's very much involved in this. Him and Angela, his wife, are highly involved in this whole process, and it's just been fantastic. So
that's great. Again, we're on the attorney Michael Troy on the Newsmaker line talking to Jim Zbach of the Great Lakes Raiders Boosters Club about his fundraiser to build a new Fred and Biletnikoff sign at Biletnikoff Field.
Hey, Jim, it's Chaz.
Let me tell you something. Hang on a second.
Yeah.
The reason I'm doing this is I'm not too concerned about raising the money locally for the sign. That's $10,000 to $12,000 is really nothing in the scheme of things. We can do that. What I want, though, is we're going to have a sign there that says it's a list of sponsors for the sign. I want Raider Nation to be on that list. Okay?
Yeah, that'll be. I love that.
It just seems the right thing to do. We could do this locally and put up just the Great Lakes Raiders and other people who have donated. But I want Raider Nation on that list to show their appreciation of what Fred has done for this team, and the fact that he needs to be honored the way he should. So that's kind of the reason behind this. So it's not that I have to have it. It's just I'd really like Raider Nation listed on that sign.
That's cool.
We agree with you there. So, Jim, you got a couple guys on the committee there that played with Fred in high school. So what's the best maybe story they tell about Fred's playing days there at Erie High School?
I haven't heard too many stories from those guys. I do know that they lined up across from him and they had their own names for the way they played and stuff, and which is kind of fun. But Fred was a man amongst boys in the school, and he was just he was all city, all state, college All American. I mean, he was so dominant, and he grew up in a part of town, Russian part of town that was very highly competitive. All kinds of kids lived in that area, and they were always playing sports and competing against each other, and that was part of the reasons. Plus, I think he had older brothers too that helped that process. But so I haven't heard too many stories about them playing. But I know he was just so good compared to everybody else. It was just amazing to watch.
Well, Jim, and you're right. I think everybody in Raider Nation would love to help you. So if people are looking for the opportunity, and by the way, you are a devoted, lifelong Raiders fan. You sent me a picture before the show, which I'll put up for folks to see with your sons, and how you guys dress up a little steampunk looking action, which is really cool.
That's right. Exactly.
And you're known as Erie Raider on Twitter for those people who want to follow Jim at Jay Zbach, ZBACH. But if people want to donate to the cause, Raider Nation wants to jump in, how do they do so?
I'm going to put it up on. I'm going to pin it at the top of our Facebook page.
Great.
From the Great Lakes Raiders Facebook page, and have it on there. So there's a way to do it electronically or mail a check. And the cool thing is we can do this tax deductible. So it's done through Erie Schools Foundation. And because of that, whoever donates can actually write it off into taxes, which is pretty sticking cool.
That's awesome. Well, Jim, we got a hard stop here, so we want to thank you. And we'll keep in touch with you and make sure that we get everybody updated on the cause. You take care, my friend.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much
Jim.
for having me, guys. Take care.
All right, there you go. Make sure you check out that Facebook page. We'll put it up on our site as well so you guys can contribute. All right, we're going to step aside. When we come back, the show rolls on. Jay Schroeder will join us. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
we've got your Raiders covered.
Knock on wood if you're with me.
It's Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio 1140. And now, here's your host, Scott Gobranson.
Welcome back. Hour number 2, Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. The Raiders season might be over. Our season never ends. That's right. Raiders talk, news, commentary all year long.
365.
All year long as we roll on into the off season, which there doesn't seem to really be much more in the NFL. And lots going on, and there will be a lot, obviously, with the Raiders moving here to Las Vegas. And a lot of player movement, all kinds of things could be going on as we move forward. Coming up on the NFL New Year, which will begin in March. And that's when, actually, the Raiders will become the Las Vegas Raiders, March 18th to be specific. So we'll see how that all runs down, and we'll keep you up to date on all of it. Now, what we wanted to do was clearly the discussion around the Raiders at the quarterback position. Derek Carr had a very good year, statistically put up numbers, didn't have much help from a defense on the other side of the ball, but he still is a lightning rod. And so one of the things that we had talked about here at Silver and Black Today was that, you know, we're not here saying that anybody should be gone or that they should move on from their quarterback. Quarterbacks are not easy to come by in the NFL. You don't just get rid of a good one. But what we suggested was maybe competition would be good. Maybe you bring in someone to push Derek Carr. Maybe that'll help him. Maybe it won't. Well, we decided that it would be best to hear from somebody who actually played the position in the NFL. And so we go out on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line, and we are joined by former NFL Pro Bowler, Super Bowl champion, and, of course, former Los Angeles Raider quarterback Jay Schroeder. Jay, welcome to the show. Appreciate you coming on.
Oh, you bet. Good morning, guys. How are you?
Hey, Jay.
Doing really great. Okay, Jay, so here's the question. I mean, obviously, you've been on both sides of this, too, at different points in your career, like most quarterbacks are, and that is, you know, you're the starting quarterback, somebody's pushing from behind you. They sometimes take your job, or at least they push you to a point where you're on top of your game, the best that you can be. In your experience being a quarterback, you were also a coach. Do you think that it's a good thing for a starting quarterback to have that person behind them pushing them a little bit, or does it depend on the person?
Well, that's a loaded question. Yes, it's both.
Yeah,
it really is. It's a matter of the coaching staff knowing your quarterback and knowing his personality. Some guys get to the point where they feel like, hey, any competition is a knock on what I'm doing. If you want somebody else, get somebody else and get me out of here. Other guys thrive on competition. And so you have to know their personality. I personally appreciated the competition because it pushed me. It always, I was always one of those guys looking, hey, I know I can get better. I'm not perfect. I don't do things right all the time. And, somebody that comes in and pushes me, good. Let's be better. And, in the long run, I looked at it, what's the best for the team? If me being pushed to get better to help the team, that's a good thing. So that's a loaded question. So now it's a question John Gruden's got to ask himself, and he's got to look at a couple of things, guys. He's got to look at, number one, we all know the defense wasn't up to par. Number two, the outside wide receiver position, there's got to be somebody there that can stretch the defense, and he needs some help there. If those two things happen, Derek Carr did have a good year. Is that enough to move us to where we need to go? So it's a loaded question, but I think competition, to me personally, with my personality, is a good thing.
Hey, Jay, it's Chaz. We haven't talked to you since that opening weekend, Ickey Woods charity golf tournament for the Ickey Woods Foundation. How's your golf game going?
Golf game is slowed down. It's a little cool here. It's in the 40s here in St. Louis, but
a little chilly up there. How's our buddy Brian Schaefer doing up there?
Oh, he's doing fine. He's doing fine. But I'll be the first one to tell you at this stage in my career and with my body, I'm a warm weather golfer.
I'm with you on that.
Play golf.
So you're still in the top 10 of all the major Raiders passing categories. Just to let everybody know out there what a great quarterback you were. And to me, that speaks to the difficulty of having solid, continuous quarterback play. So can you explain to everyone out there how difficult it is to get all the pieces of the puzzle together to form a solid football team?
Oh, it's extremely difficult. And I look at the Raiders, and they're building with young, inexperienced guys that have to learn how to play in the NFL, and that's tough. I was fortunate to step into some veteran teams, and for a quarterback to be successful, a lot of things have to happen. You have to have a great offensive line. You have to have some semblance of a running game, if not a really good running game, to help you. And then you got to have great receivers, and of course, you got to have a defense and special teams that gets you the ball. So you have to encompass the whole team, and that's hard to build. And everybody knows, we can see it every year, a couple of injuries here or there on any team, and a team goes down or a team goes up. And the team that has the confidence and the all-around good play is the team that's going to dominate. And, take example, the two games yesterday. You saw the Tennessee Titans that said, hey, look, we are going to run the football no matter what. And, you have the Ravens, who were one of the top defenses in the league all year. They couldn't stop them. And on the other side, you watch San Francisco, their offensive line and defensive line just dominated the game. And it's hard to do anything else when you can't get started.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Again, we're on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line with former Raiders quarterback Jay Schroeder, Pro Bowler, Super Bowl champion. Jay, when you look at this question around quarterbacks, now it's nothing new, right? You played the position, right. And you know that there's always conversation about the quarterback because there's so much highlight on what the quarterback does. With the new NFL, and I say the new NFL because the game has changed, especially offensively, and now you're seeing, like you talked about yesterday's game with Lamar Jackson, this new type of quarterback, no longer just drop back passers. There's a lot of athleticism involved in a different way than it was in the past. Has the position changed such that it's more important? Is it just the same and we look at it differently because it's being played different? Or what do you think all the attention heaped on Derek Carr? Derek Carr is not the reason why the Raiders lose games all the time. It's not ever one person. It's a team game. But when you look at the quarterback position today, how much has it changed from when you played, and how much does that affect fans when they look at the game?
Well, I think because of the emphasis on the quarterback, it affects fans more than anything else. And let me just put it to you this way. The quarterback is very important, but it's not the only thing. You brought up, Lamar Jackson yesterday. He threw for 365 yards and ran for 143. He had a phenomenal game, but they lost.
Right.
Why? The defense couldn't stop them. Yes, there were some turnovers. There's a lot of factors that go in. I'm always been that way ever since I started playing the game. The quarterback gets way too much credit and way too much blame. And everybody, as a fan, as you're looking at the fan and things aren't going right and your team loses, one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to change the head coach or you're going to change the quarterback. Nobody cares if the right guard, left guard, those guys, it's just the truth, because those
Sure.
are the guys that get highlighted, which is unfortunate. Derek Carr had a great year last year. There's no question about it. He did some phenomenal things. Now, the question is, with a little more help on defense and maybe, another running back and some more receivers, does that put you over the top? Those are the questions the coaching staff has and the GM have to answer at this point.
No, absolutely true, Jay. And the question I want to ask you before we let you go in the last minute and a half or so we have you is, I think that a lot of fans today, especially as you look at social media and how fans can instantly react and say really awful things that reach a lot of people. Derek Carr as a human being, no one's ever questioned him. He's a good man. He's got a lot of faith. He does a lot of things off the field that are so positive for the world that we live in. But I did notice as the year went on, because he went into last year and this whole thing about, is Derek Carr going to be the right quarterback for John Gruden? Then he comes into this year, that kind of quieted down a little bit, and then they hit that bump in the road after the nice 6-4 start, and it started coming back. I could see it in press conferences weighing on him, even though he said it wasn't. As a human being, you guys are tough, right? You play professional football, but when does that start to get to you, and how does it impact you mentally on the field?
Well, you hit it right on the head. We're human beings. We have feelings. We have thoughts, and believe me, Derek Carr wants to win every football game he goes out there. Some days it works, some days it doesn't, I remember playing a game. We played the New York Giants when I was with Washington. I threw 5 interceptions. I was thinking, oh, my God, we had no chance. And I look up and we lost the game 21-20. And I was like, crap. It's just one of those. Those things, they wear on you. Then
Sure.
you go into the next game and you're like, what's going to happen? That's just being a human being. And what he's got to do is have that support system around him to go, hey, look, we're not going down that road. We got the pieces in place. We can do this, we can do that, and we're going to help you out. And but it is the psyche is fragile, especially at the quarterback position.
Well, and Jay, to that end, a lot is made out of what John Gruden says publicly. For those who sit there and say, well, see, he didn't give him a ringing endorsement in his year-end press conference, what happens in the building and what happens out are two very different things. Coaches, especially today, especially one like Gruden who's very media savvy, he's not going to come out and tell the media exactly what's on his mind and what's going on behind closed doors. So should fans just relax a little bit on that and not read too much into it?
Fans need to relax. I'll tell you a quick funny story. I had the opportunity to play my last year in Arizona for Buddy Ryan, and we're getting ready to play a game where we needed to win and everything else. And Buddy walks in typical Buddy fashion. He says, "I got this one," and everybody's like, "What are we talking about?" And he goes out and he just says some outlandish stuff into the press. And then he comes back in and he says, "Okay, they're talking about me. Can you guys just worry about playing football this week?"
Yeah, nice.
Took off the pressure.
He was like, "Okay, you guys figure out how to play football. I'll take all the, And so he was out there in the press all the week and everything else. And we actually ended up, we played Minnesota, I think, that week, and it was a very good game, and we ended up winning the game. So you can't always believe everything that a coach or anybody tells you, because what goes on behind the scenes is a lot different.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Well, Jay Schroeder, former Los Angeles Raiders quarterback, of course, former Pro Bowler, Super Bowl champion, has been our guest. And Jay, we'll get you on around the Super Bowl, man. We love talking to you. I appreciate the time today.
Sounds good, guys.
Thanks, Jay.
All right. There you have it. Former Raider Jay Schroeder talking about being a quarterback in the NFL. Is it good competition? And, of course, we kind of related this to the Derek Carr situation. Great insight there from a man who's been there, which I think is very, very important when we discuss this stuff and we talk about that. All right. We're going to step aside. When we come back, we're going to be joined by attorney Michael Troiano. We're going to check out the police blotter, which got a fresh edition this morning. If you haven't heard, Julian Edelman arrested in Beverly Hills last night. We'll talk to him about that and more. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
When you need inside info on your Raiders, you'll find it right here.
Raiders defensive line coach Brenson Buckner.
We're not trying to be the best pass rushers we can be. We're not trying to be the best run stoppers we can be. We're trying to be the best football players we can be.
With your Walker Furniture Raiders Daily, I'm Mark Thomas. The Silver and Black met with
My favorite thing about our team is our Madden ratings are really low, but we're pretty good at football.
Knock on wood if you're with me.
Raider Nation rallies with us. CBS Sports Radio 11.
Hi, this is Steve Wisniewski, and you're listening to the Silver and Black Today.
Oh, yes, you are. Welcome back to Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Don't forget, Silver and Black tonight, 6 to 7 p.m. on Tuesday. Chaz Osborne, Kelly Kreiner, and myself are here, and we're with you. Second week of the playoffs. We're going to talk a little bit about playoffs towards the end of the show. But what we want to do now is we want to bring in our good friend and our sponsor, of course. So we're going out on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line to welcome in Michael Troiano. Counselor, how are you, brother?
I'm great. How are you guys doing?
Doing really good. Okay, so we're going to go through a little bit of police blotter, and it just happened before we went on the air, so I didn't have time to ping you. But Julian Edelman from the Patriots arrested last night for misdemeanor vandalism. I guess he jumped on the hood of a car, which has me more thinking about PEDs than it has anything else. But when you talk about an arrest like that, when you get arrested for a misdemeanor, do they on a situation like that, Michael, do they take you down and book you and all that stuff and then just turn you loose, or how do they usually deal with that?
Well, it's funny that the first thing that came to your mind was PEDs. The first thing that came to my mind was alcohol. Or any other kind of controlled substance. But yeah, maybe it could be a mix of both. We don't really know. But when in a situation like that, generally it's up to the officer's discretion. So if it's a misdemeanor, depending on the value of the vehicle or what the extent of the damage was, the officer can simply just write you a citation. So they would briefly detain you, write a citation, give you a future court date, almost like similar to a traffic ticket, if you will. Or, they have the authority, even on misdemeanor charges, to book you and bring you in.
Yeah, that's what's interesting, and we don't know all the details about this. I'm sure TMZ will post some video at some point because they always seem to do, Michael. But with that, so yeah, they can either give you a ticket, take you down, all that stuff. But then if you're damaging property, correct? So from a vandalism standpoint, he's then could have perhaps trouble with whoever's car he damaged, correct? From a civil perspective.
Sure. I mean, if I'm pretty sure whenever he woke up this morning and sobered up or whatever he did, his people probably are figuring out this problem real quick to pay for that car and maybe a little extra hush money so that this thing will go wrong.
Yeah, it's crazy. Okay, so that's Julian Edelman. Now, a couple other things that happened in December. We have Cameron Kelly, of course, Pittsburgh Steelers, mid-December, disorderly conduct for fighting. He basically got in what you would consider kind of a street fight, bar fight, and he could face some jail time for that. But when you're talking about a situation like this, of course, he's a celebrity athlete, but when you talk about getting in a fight, right? Some people are always going to be tough guys. Doesn't matter where they are at. Somebody says the wrong thing to them and they want to go at it. What kind of repercussions are there from just having a fight? Let's say you're coming out of a bar and you have words with somebody and you go at it. What do people look at? Not only Cameron Kelly, but everyday folks like you and I when it comes to things like fighting.
I mean, typically, if no weapons are used and nobody's injured, then you're looking simply at misdemeanors, which, at least in the state of Nevada, the maximum jail sentence you can get is 6 months, which isn't fun generally for people that have, a job and things going on in their life. That's going to kind of put you in a tailspin, if you will. But, if it's, let's say, Scott, you and I are at the bar having a drink and our friendly confrontation turns into a pushing, shoving match and then a punch or two's thrown, they could put us both in there for misdemeanor battery and then let the courts figure it out who started or if there was a self-defense component. But as long as neither one of us has what we call a substantial bodily harm, or neither one of us used a weapon, and we don't have a domestic relationship, obviously, then you're looking at a simple battery misdemeanor here in Clark County.
Well, and again, we're talking to attorney Michael Troiano about the NFL police blotter. With this situation, and especially with someone who is famous, as an athlete, then you deal with, I would imagine, from a civil perspective, somebody sees a big target on your back because you might make a lot of money. When it comes to a jury, if this were ever to go in front of a civil jury, I know you're dealing with criminal stuff most of the time, Michael. But when it comes to that, how much do they factor in when they're considering that in front of a jury?
Which part? Them being famous?
Yeah, I mean, does it hurt you more than it helps you?
It's not. I mean, it's like anything in life. It depends on who you're dealing with, and that's where, whether it's criminal or civil case, voir dire, or what is better known as jury selection, is almost a science, if you will. You want to make sure that you have like-minded individuals on that jury that will, be helpful for your case. So an example like that, if you're a civil lawyer and you're suing a famous athlete for freaking out and attacking just a normal, Joe or Jan, then you want people who probably aren't the biggest fans of athletes and think that they're pampered and spoiled and that they get whatever they want. You want that kind of mentality. You probably don't want, to walk through the hallways of Canton and get some members of the Football Hall of Fame to be on your jury if that's the kind of case that you're putting forward.
Yeah, now we're going to switch cases. Xavier Howard of the Miami Dolphins was released after his arrest. He was arrested on a domestic battery charge following an argument with his fiancée over the purchase of a purse. So I don't know the details on the cost of the purse, or if it was a Michael Kors or a Coach or whatever it was, but certainly he did not take kindly to her spending the money and takes it to a point of domestic violence. And we've talked about domestic violence because this tends to be something that we see quite a bit of with professional athletes, unfortunately. But in this case, and in the case, again, for just to put it at a level that everybody else can now understand, because we've all had relationships and things sometimes can get emotional. When you're looking at these domestic violence, how have things changed over the last several years in the criminal courts, Michael, when it comes to domestic violence and how it's treated more seriously?
Well, it's definitely treated more serious, just like DUIs. I mean, we're in the information age, right? Everything is out there. I mean, Julian Edelman was arrested or cited just a couple hours ago, and it's common knowledge. And police officers generally don't have discretion when it comes to a domestic violence incident. So, for example, back to the bar incident that I came up with, and you and I have a couple of drinks and we get an argument, depending on what happens, and if there's a lack of injuries and you and I kind of hug it out and we're like, oh, we don't want to press charges, we're buddies, they might just say, all right, you guys get out of the bar, go home, take an Uber, and move on with their life. But if it's a domestic situation, so there's some sort of partnership, whether it's a husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, or son-daughter blood relationship, and if they believe that somebody used some sort of physical contact against the other that's not justified, they're going to take you in at a minimum for a 12-hour hold. What has changed, at least in the positive, in my opinion, in the state of Nevada, is that they no longer go after non-blood relationships. So say you got a bunch of college friends who are roommates splitting costs, and one of them gets in a tussle with the other one. That still might be a simple battery misdemeanor, but they're no longer here in Nevada going to charge that as domestic violence, which I think is good, because the domestic violence ramifications are tenfold, if you will, as far as how it could impact your future if you're in fact found guilty.
Yeah, that's crazy. Again, talking to attorney Michael Troiano, our legal expert. And Michael, one of the things too, we wanted to just spend a couple minutes with you because, you're there for folks when they get into trouble. They might not be meaning to do so. And over the last several months in Las Vegas, we have seen some really horrific things happen. We had an issue on I-15 several times with people going the wrong way, intoxicated as they're driving. How do we solve this problem? I know you have to sometimes, most of the time when you're dealing with DUI, you're dealing with the other side of it, which is helping somebody make sure they're represented, which is their right. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to the issue that we've seen here in Las Vegas around DUIs and the harm that has come to people, what do we do? Is it? Awareness is so widespread. Is this partly we need to do better enforcement? Is it how do we tackle this problem? I guess is my question.
That's if I had the answer to that, I'd probably be in a much better position today. I mean, it's tough. I mean, we're talking alcohol, drugs, addiction, mental health, so many things that affect our society here in the United States and across the world on a much grander scale. I mean, education is one thing. The fact that we have choices now, Uber, Lyft, those are things that we didn't have 5, 6, 7 years ago. Certainly didn't have when I was in college and high school. And many people either don't know about it or they just choose to look the other way. I think a lot of it is education and getting just the treatment that people need. I wish I could sit here and say, oh, we're going to solve it one day. I think it's just an issue that we can only limit.
Yeah, and I tend to be pretty conservative and libertarian when it comes to personal rights. But part of me just wants them to put those devices that I know that you're familiar with when people have multiple DUIs and they have to have the device on their car where they have to blow into it to show that they're not intoxicated to start it. I know we're going down a really slippery slope there with personal rights. But, man, I know it's probably me just trying to find a good, quick, simple answer, and there is none. But certainly, Michael, we appreciate you giving us your opinion on it. And, of course, if you need any help, if you find yourself in an unfortunate situation or someone you know, you can call Michael Troiano. You can also visit TroianoVegasLaw.com if you need representation from things like DUI or more serious matters. Make sure you give Michael a call. Michael, I appreciate, as always, you being here and, of course, sponsoring the show. And we'll talk to you real soon.
All right. Happy Sunday, guys. Have a good one. All
right. That was attorney Michael Troiano, our legal expert, and he takes us to the next break. Some serious issues there to deal with, but we thought it was important to address some of them and, of course, address the NFL police blotter, which got a new entry today with Julian Edelman being arrested in Beverly Hills. Raider fans love that because it's a Patriot. And nobody was hurt, so we can laugh at it, too. Right. All right. We're going to step aside. When we come back, it's time. Kelly's Corner, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back after this.
CBS Sports Radio. This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Welcome back to the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Don't forget, join us Tuesday night, 6 to 7 p.m. Chaz and I fire up the engines again for Silver and Black tonight. All right, this is the time of the show that we all enjoy. We all love when Kelly gets fired up and has a subject to lead us into. And today's, since he gave me a preview, sometimes he doesn't always tell us exactly what he's going to talk about. But today we know what he's going to talk about, and I can't agree with him more, and I can't wait to discuss it with him. Here's Mr. Kelly Kreiner with Kelly's Corner.
Yeah, so today is confirmation bias Sunday for a lot of people on Twitter, as I got hit with several things last night. I tweeted out something that somebody had on Twitter. It said Joe Burrow is older than Lamar Jackson, and he is, to keep in perspective that if you are the anti-Lamar Jackson person, you're running around today waving your flag like you won the lottery, which to me is just kind of mind-boggling considering Lamar Jackson became the first player in NFL history last night with 300 passing yards and 100 rushing yards.
Again, first in NFL history.
First.
It's amazing.
He accounted for 508 of the team's, I think it was either 530 or 550 yards.
Incredible.
They ran 91 play. Like, that's the most dominant 16-point loss you'll ever see in football.
Every statistical category, they crushed them.
Every statistical category.
Time of possessions, first downs, yards, everything.
But everybody out there, he's 0-2 in the playoffs. Not a good quarterback. Not an elite quarterback. And I just want to point out how stupid that is. 508 total yards in a playoff game.
Yeah.
Yes, the first interception bounces off its receiver's hands. The second one was terrible. The second was just a bad interception. I cannot in no way, shape, or form defend that one.
But every quarterback throws them.
But yeah, that's going to happen. But he's 0-2 in the playoffs his first 2 years as a starter. Peyton Manning lost his first 3 playoff games. Peyton Manning has the record for most playoff losses. Like 13, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what? Sometimes you lose playoff games, and it's not your fault. We talk about the quarterback gets too much credit when they win, too much, they catch too much flack when they lose. He had 508 total yards in a playoff game. Well, I have to harp on 508 total yards, and everybody's out there trumpeting the fact that this guy can't be a quarterback in the league.
Yeah.
If the receivers aren't dropping 6 or 7 balls in that game, he has 560 total yards. Maybe they win the game, maybe they don't. But when you're putting up numbers like that,
insane. Win
or lose, you can't take this position. I was right. I said this guy wasn't going to be a quarterback in the NFL. He's 0-2 in the playoffs. I get that.
Yeah.
They were the number 1 seed because of Lamar Jackson.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, we hear this a lot about the Raiders, right? And even Jay Schroeder talked about Jackson. He talked about his lack of receivers, Carr's lack of receivers. He had the same issue Carr had. He didn't have any receivers either. Yeah, Marquise Brown is a nice young receiver who was hurt, didn't play, as you mentioned earlier, Kelly. But overall, it just goes to show you, yes, you have to have a good quarterback who can get you there, who can lead the team, who can elevate those around him. That doesn't mean if you have it, you're guaranteed to win. And I think you saw that yesterday. And also, to your point about the numbers and the records and all that, Lamar Jackson, look, because he lost, it doesn't take away from what he did the entire year. It doesn't take away from what he did in the game. Because, if Baltimore catches a few more balls, if they make a couple defensive stands, that game can go the other way. And so I think it's disingenuous. People love to build people up. And anytime somebody's built up, and there's no question that Lamar Jackson took the mantle from Mahomes last year, and he was the guy the NFL wanted to put all the PR and everything behind. So I get it. When that happens, there's instantly people who are going to be counterculture and despise him and say he's not going to be a good quarterback. But Chaz, the reality is Lamar Jackson is going to be a very good, great quarterback in this league for years to come. Great quarterbacks lose playoff games sometimes.
He's phenomenal. No, you said it exactly. One loss doesn't erase everything the Ravens did this season. He's going to be the youngest MVP ever. He had more touchdowns than they had punts.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some mind-boggling. It's crazy.
They were down in the first quarter for the first time since week 4 in that game last night. But you know what nobody's talking about? The fact that Lamar Jackson gave up 180 rushing yards to a running back.
Right.
You know, it's
Yeah.
like, hey, 180 rushing yards. It just blows me away. Tennessee has 160 passing yards combined in the last 2 games, and they've won both games.
Yep.
If you stop the run in that game, and the biggest thing, the 145-yard pass after that 4th down was a backbreaker because that was just brutal. Because that's the one pass that went over 1 yard, basically. You have less than 80 yards for a game and 45 of it on the one.
Yep.
But yeah, everybody's this is Lamar Jackson. If he doesn't give up 180 rushing yards, he wins this.
Lamar Jackson was 6th in rushing this season. He's a quarterback.
Yeah.
He's not a running back. And how many touchdown passes leading the league? Like, his stats are just so phenomenal. You can't wrap your mind around it.
But he's not any good today.
Yeah.
Because he lost the
19-3
playoff
in the regular season.
But you talked about Peyton Manning losing all those games in the playoffs, and somebody mentioned on YouTube watching our simulcast that, because he was always in the playoffs. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So the point, though, is here that good quarterbacks lose games. I mean, you go Dan Marino, you go to, you name the player, the quarterback who's been there, Jim Kelly. Jim Kelly's a Hall of Famer. He lost 4 Super Bowls.
In a row.
Right.
How ridiculous, just not to say, how ridiculous is that? Not only that you make it to the Super Bowl 4 years in a row, but you lose them all.
Right. And then that makes you a bad quarterback.
Yeah.
But that's the point, right? Which is you can't judge on one performance, and he's a young player, right? And so he gets into that game, and like every player, they make mistakes, and that happens. But at the same time, the talent and what they're learning from those mistakes is where they then go on to do it.
Right.
John Elway, who Raider fans love to hate, and I don't like him either. But John Elway, same thing. Look how many years he persevered, and he finally got his win. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't dictate whether the quarterback is a good quarterback or not if they lose one playoff game. And to your point, Kelly, which can't be drilled in people's heads enough, over 500 yards of offense on his own. I mean, if you're looking at Lamar Jackson and saying that's one of the reasons why they lost, it's disingenuous. I don't care about the turnovers. He did everything he could to make sure they won.
Yep.
500 yards of total offense in a playoff game.
Yeah. Crazy.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, it's if you were anti-Lamar, man, you're out in force today, and I just want to look at you and say, really, this is what you're hanging your hat on, that you said a guy can't play in the league who just put up 500 yards in a playoff game.
Right.
And
you're talking about some people who cover the league saying, I saw some people, journalists with the blue check mark, saying things like that. And I'm like, are you kidding me? What you clearly have some sort of agenda, because if you were being honest about the sport you cover, you're not going to sit there and say Lamar Jackson is a bad football player.
And this is something that's not going to stop either. He's going to be able to run like this and he went to a good team because the Ravens were smart enough to know this is what he does. We're going to build our team around him. Every year in the draft, you see these teams that try to mold a player around what they do instead of what the player does best. So, it's here's what we do. This guy is a complete opposite. We'll get him to work. It's like, no. When you have a talent like Lamar Jackson, you build your team around Lamar Jackson.
Well,
right.
and Kelly, I'm going to read this comment because I completely disagree with it. One of our viewers on YouTube says Lamar can't throw the ball consistently to win in the playoffs, which I think is ridiculous. So he can't throw consistently yesterday enough to win the playoffs. So the reason they lost was because he couldn't throw the ball consistently well enough.
He threw for 350 yards.
I know. What else do you want a quarterback to do?
Yeah.
Now on the other side of that, Ryan Tannehill, we talked about it, 162 yards in 2 games, and people look at that and say, "Oh, well, that's crazy." He's not anything special. They didn't win because of Ryan Tannehill. Again, numbers don't always tell the full story. Yesterday with the Titans, they did not have to throw the ball. Derrick Henry took the load, and they were winning that battle. Why would you risk it by throwing the ball more? But he had the 2 deep throws.
I was going to say, he made the one throw he had to make.
Exactly.
And that was a blown coverage.
Exactly. So you could put up 400 yards and lose a game, or you can put up 80 and win the game and be a game away from the Super Bowl. It doesn't matter. It doesn't dictate how good the player is or is not.
Yep, just too bad Lamar Jackson gave up 180 rushing yards today.
He led the league 36 touchdown passes.
Can't throw the ball.
He can't throw consistently in the playoffs. You're going on a sample of 2 games.
Right.
Versus 16.
Well, and you have to throw last year's out completely because he's a different player now.
Right. He was a backup coming in. Yeah. Didn't play a whole season.
They gave him nothing last year. It's like it's basically like when you're playing you're playing a pickup basketball game. You just throw the ball out there and say go play. That's what they did last year.
They had a different game plan last year.
They had nothing really set up. It was playground football last year. This year they built the offense around him. And like we mentioned, there were several drops in there. 500 total yards in a playoff game.
A lot of drop passes.
But he can't throw consistently enough to win in the playoffs.
I tell you what, I'll take him
any day.
I'll take him in the new Las Vegas Stadium.
Yeah.
I'd
take him in a heartbeat.
A lot of folks would.
He's a special player.
Carr in 12, Baltimore, you interested?
Yeah.
Give me a guy who can't pass, but will get me 500 yards in a playoff game.
Well, that leads us to our next break. It's Kelly's Corner. I was fired up for that one. Good job, Kelly, as always. We're going to step aside when we come back for the final time this show. We'll talk a little bit about today's playoff games. And maybe we'll still complain a little bit about people dissing Lamar Jackson.
Let's talk about Derek Carr.
You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Tuesday night at 6:30 on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
You found the most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black. This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Here's your host, Scott Gobranson.
Welcome back to Silver and Black Today, show number 91. Hey now, getting up to triple digits. If your mic was on.
We're getting there, baby.
Hey, I haven't forgotten my mic today. You have. You're taking the mantle up for me.
Yes.
Welcome back to Silver and Black Today as we close out the show. We want to talk a little bit about the playoff games today because obviously being football fans, despite the fact that the Raiders are not in the playoffs, it's of interest because we're all football fans. And so some interesting matchups today. Let's start with the first one in Kansas City, of course, of interest to Raider fans because it's AFC based. And that, of course, is the Texans rolling into Kansas City. The Chiefs lead the all-time series 6-5. Texans have won 2 of the past 3, But in my view, as we talked earlier, Kelly Kreiner, I don't think that matters. I know Chaz, you'll have the counterpoint here, but I think this is going to be a blowout. I mean, I'm thinking it could be a 3-touchdown blowout.
Like you said, the Texans won 2 of the last 3. Do you have the dates on those by any chance?
The last time they met was the 9th of January, 2016. The Chiefs beat the Texans 30-0. The last game was this year.
So
the last game was this year in October when the Texans beat the Chiefs 31-24.
Okay. Now, was that the one where was Mahomes? Was Mahomes hurt in those, or was he playing?
Mahomes, that was his first game back, if I recall.
Okay,
yeah.
so yeah. All right, so it's a revenge game. So yeah, they're winning by 3 touchdowns. No, I just think the Texans aren't any good.
Yeah.
They don't look like it. Optics, you're watching it and you're like, boy, they're just kind of stumbling and bumbling, and then all of a sudden they find a way.
Well, but they found a way against an inept offense in Buffalo, who went up 16-0, decided we're going to start handing the ball to a 49-year-old Frank Gore 4 times in a row. I mean, that I don't understand. Like, if I owned the Buffalo Bills, I would fire everybody at the end of the third quarter and started coaching myself. Like that game plan made no sense. Now, I just can't see the Texans beating the Chiefs.
Now, Chaz, we look at the Texans. They won the AFC South Division, 2nd consecutive season, the 4th time in 5 years. They won their first playoff game, though, last week since 2016. So it had been 3 seasons going on.
We're not talking about Houston 2016 playoff game.
No, that's the last time they won.
That game didn't count.
Why? I know why. That's the Raider connection. So you got it. But to me, the problem with this Houston team, Chaz, and why I think it's going to be a blowout is the defense. I think offensively, even though Houston doesn't have all the tools they need. I love Deshaun Watson. I'm a big fan of his. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't have much around him, I don't think, consistently. Will Fuller's a good wide receiver, but he's hardly on the field because of injuries. He's very fragile. What are they going to – why do you think it's going to be closer than we think it is?
Lean on D-Hop. No, they've got defense. They're merciless. They've got I know the camera loves J.J. Watt, but they've got some other guys there.
They got the 27th rated defense in the NFL this year.
And they've got Gary
Gary
Conley.
Kerryon Conley,
the 27th,
who got torched.
The X Factor. No, it's just my hate of Kansas City. That's plain and simple.
See, that's honest though. I like that.
And trust me, it's tough. I've got a future on Kansas City, and I was talking to a bartender last night, and he saw I had my Raiders stuff on. He asked me if I thought I was going to win the Kansas City game. He's like, "Well, I think Kansas City's going to win this because I got a future on it." It's like I kind of feel dirty,
right?
But like you're stepping out.
Yeah. But I think they're the best team in the playoffs right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I mean, Deshaun Watson to me is so much fun to watch. If you look at him and his rushing last week, 131 yards, 131 yards in 2 postseason games, the 3rd most by a quarterback in their first 2 games in NFL history, 280 yards passing and a touchdown, and he rushed for 2 in the Week 6 meeting against the Chiefs. So he's feasted against that Chiefs defense. I'm not saying that Houston won't score.
Right.
I think they will.
But they do have a problem with the running quarterback.
Yes, and I think that the Chiefs, I think it's just, again, I know Raider fans will hate to hear it because you don't want the Chiefs to win, but I just think it's the Chiefs have a much clearer path than they did 2 weeks ago to get to the Super Bowl. Whether they win it or not, I don't know. I just think that they have a good shot now with Baltimore out of it.
But that's in the back of their mind. Every year you see it in late December, teams that have to win, and they don't win because it gets in the back of their mind. Oh, yeah, well, now we've got a clear path to the Super Bowl because the biggest
I don't think Andy Reid will let him,
way.
though. I don't think Andy Reid.
No,
and Andy Reid wants it, too, because he's not one.
And Andy Reid's the X factor there.
Andy Reid off a bye.
Yeah.
Look at those numbers. They're insanity.
That's when they played the Raiders this year in the second game. Remember, coming off the bye.
But his numbers are, 19-3 all time after the bye or something?
Yeah.
And that's the factor. I think Andy Reid is the factor that puts them over the top.
And you mentioned those Deshaun Watson stats. The Lamar Jackson laughs at those.
I'm not saying that Lamar Jackson's
runs
not better.
stats.
I like Deshaun. I like both young men. I think they're really good players, and I think they're both good guys too, which is really cool.
It's funny to kind of bring that back. When I was a big Lamar Jackson guy in the draft, and I told everybody, like, Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson played on the same field in college.
Yeah.
And Lamar Jackson was by far the better player.
Yeah.
That gets forgot.
Lamar Jackson reads his stats in his rearview mirror while he's rolling past him because he's not worried about that. But he's out of the playoffs, and Watson's still in them. So,
and
this Mahomes and Watson, shouldn't this game be played in London?
I'm already.
It's elementary.
I'm
Chaz.
already sick of those jokes, and I've only seen 2.
That's why
But
Chaz brought it up.
That's all you're going to hear and see on Twitter.
Oh, it's going to be a funny graphic
'cause-
on this TV broadcast, I'm sure.
You know how Darren Ravel has the crappy headlines and stuff like that. I mean, listen, he's made a brand out of himself doing stuff like this. I'll give him all the credit in the world. Ross Tucker tweeted him this morning, and he had his own thing. Said like, "Is it elementary, my dear Watson, or something?" He goes, "I bet Darren Ravel has that." And Darren Ravel, all he replied was, he goes, "Nope, but I have one saved." So
he was ready.
He's already got
got it
his
queued up.
bad headline queued up for this game.
Well, one of the things, too, to watch, I think, today with this Chiefs game, and I'm going to throw this out there, is Chris Jones, who got injured in practice, 9 sacks on the year. Chris Jones, who I think is a free agent.
Yes.
And
well,
he's a restricted free agent.
No. He's a franchise tag waiting to happen. There's no way he's leaving Kansas City.
You say that, but crazy things happen.
Okay.
If he's not tagged, that's who the Raiders should go get. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but if he's not tagged,
then they're idiots.
Not only did I just fire everybody at Buffalo. If you don't franchise tag at least Chris Jones, you should fire everybody at Kansas City.
Yeah,
that might not happen.
If I'm a Raider fan, I'm hoping it doesn't happen. Kelly, I think, is grounded well in reality. It probably will.
Yeah, because your defense really sucks, and you have one great defensive player. Might want to hold on to that
guy. Yeah, especially after you made the trades last year, too.
Could be the second best defensive tackle.
By the way, with the minute we have left or so, we also have the Packers and Seahawks.
Nobody cares about this game.
They don't. I still like the Seahawks, despite the weather, despite being on the road. I just think, as much as I liked Aaron Rodgers, I think he's fallen off, and I don't think he's got a lot of people around him. That means the Packers will blow out the Seahawks.
That's right.
But nonetheless, I really think Russell Wilson goes in there and shows us what he's all about and takes that win.
And people are betting the under like the game's over, so that means it's going to fly over. It's going to be an 87-7. It's going to be like a Texas Tech, Texas A&M football game.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, the money is just pouring in on the under. Like, it's insane. So, yeah, it's going to fly over.
Because of weather.
I think it's just weather that and both of these offenses just look very anemic.
Right.
You know, you have quarterbacks that you know are going to make some plays, but Seattle wants to run the ball all the time. Green Bay runs it because they don't have as big a passing game. But neither one of these. I mean, it's just neither one of these teams is inspiring anybody to be excited about the potential offense.
Yeah. By the way, our good friend Ed Marshall, who I know you've tweeted at in Alaska, says, how much money is Kelly losing today? Do we know?
Well, we had a.
I know you've won more than I've ever bet. I'm not
like
worried.
I said, I've got a futures bet on Kansas City. I have Kansas City first half -6. I've got -9.5 also. I haven't touched the Green Bay game yet.
Yeah.
Because, like I said,
no
one cares about that game.
All right. Well, it's time to go, guys. As always, Kelly Kreiner, thanks for being with us, man.
As always.
Chaz Osborne, we'll see you Tuesday.
Pleasure. Yep. See you Tuesday.
All right. For Chaz and for Kelly, I am Scott Branson. You've been listening to Silver and Black today. Talk to you Silver and Black tonight, Tuesday, 6 to 7 p.m. here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Thanks for being with us today. Enjoy the games, and we'll talk to you next time.
Fans, enter the golden giveaway at Toyota.